Muscle atrophy is something that's really common in people with MS, and I think to explain it, we should understand first kind of what muscles do and how they work. Muscles pull two bones towards each other. Pretty simple. If I have my bicep engaging, it's pulling my arm bone towards my shoulder, and my bicep connects at my arm bones and my shoulder. So you have the two bony connection points, which are called the origin and the insertion, and then the muscle is between them, and the muscle is going to pull the two things together. I think sometimes it's easy to get a little bit confused and think that muscles can also push because we have actions that are pushing. So if we're doing a push-up, like if we're down on the floor and I'm doing a push-up, what's actually happening is my tricep, so the back of my arm, is pulling, and then my pec muscles are pulling my arms forward. So there's two muscle groups and then a couple of other things that are happening there that are pulling towards each other. So if we look at it as a blind, because that's a perfectly reasonable example, but actually kind of does show well. So muscle fibers should contract really smoothly. So if we have the two edges of this are the bone, then we have them pull together when the muscle is contracting. And then as you lengthen the muscle, so lengthening my bicep here, so this would be my bicep contracting, lengthening my muscle is actually engaging my tricep, so the opposite side of the muscle, and that's going to lengthen the muscle. And this should all happen like in this really kind of smooth motion. So there's actually 4 types of muscle atrophy. We have whole muscle atrophy, muscle fiber atrophy, neurogenic atrophy, and something called sarcopenia. First, you can get the kind of muscle atrophy that just anyone in the world can get. That's called whole muscle atrophy. If you worked out a lot and then your muscles got bigger and then you stopped working out and your muscles got smaller, that would be whole muscle atrophy. Everyone has experienced whole muscle atrophy. If you've gone on vacation and you were a workout person and then you did nothing for 2 weeks, then you've probably experienced loss of strength and loss of size of your muscles. Maybe not even noticeable, but some loss of size of the muscles because you weren't doing anything. The opposite of muscle atrophy is muscle hypertrophy. So muscle hypertrophy happens when you're doing exercise that's going to build those muscle fibers back. Now, in multiple sclerosis, we can have 2 other types of muscle atrophy. One is called a muscle fiber atrophy. Genetically, some of us are going to have more fast twitch muscle fibers, and some of us are going to have more slow twitch muscle fibers. So that would be the sprinter versus the marathoner. So the sprinter would have good fast twitch muscle fibers, which means the muscle fibers can fire really quickly. And then the slow twitch muscle fibers don't go as quickly, but what they do is you have better endurance over time. It's really common. Sometimes when people have that type of atrophy, the size of the muscle won't change, but the strength or the performance of the muscle will change. And then when you have a neurological disease where the neural signal to a muscle is being altered, you can have something called neurogenic atrophy. And in neurogenic atrophy, like we think about how a muscle should work and it should be contracting smoothly, what happens is the muscle contraction isn't really smooth anymore. Like you might have part of it contract a little bit more before the other part contracts, and then it might have some sort of weird, kind of twisting type thing. I actually have neurogenic atrophy in my left calf. So if I stand here and I stand up on my tiptoes, so my right leg is like my not MS affected leg. So if I'm standing up on my tiptoes, you see the muscle. It's actually on this side, it's pretty big. And the reason it's big is because it does all of the work. So when I'm walking and I'm pushing off, or if I'm walking upstairs or things like that, I really push with my right. And then on my left side, first of all, it's hard to even stand here without my heel dropping. But the muscle is it's smaller. So if you see the two compared to each other, left side is smaller. And then it's also kind of shaped a little weird. And that weird shape is like a pretty decent sign that there's some neurogenic atrophy. You can also have the muscle look different because there's muscles next to it that have gotten bigger or smaller based on how you're using the muscles. Sarcopenia happens just with aging. So as we get older, we just have muscle loss as just a natural part of the aging process, but you can kind of mitigate that by doing strength training. Whole muscle atrophy, pretty easy to fix. If you can't fix it with exercise because your muscles aren't getting those signals, you can actually do some work with E-stem, and we have a whole section on E-stem to help actually build muscle mass without you having to do it. It works best if you are participating in an exercise while you're doing E-stem, but you can have some muscle growth just by doing E-stem on the muscle. But ideally, you want to do an exercise combined with E-stem if you're doing E-stem to get the best results.